Hello, my friends. I doubt anybody's going to watch this live, but that's okay. I'm not really intending for that. I wanted to do a video version of the podcast. So this is going to be a video plus podcast of my semi-hit podcast called Tales from a Cult Insider. It's where I tell stories about growing up in a cult that I got out of when I was 17. It's fun. So I'm going to be recording via Audacity here on my computer, and you can watch me record if you're interested in doing that. I will turn to the camera and speak as soon as I've got things started. So I've already done an audio test on Audacity, and we're ready to rock and roll. So I mean, if you show up and decide to watch this live, you're welcome to say something, and I will happily answer any questions you might have. Here we go. Hello, welcome back to Tales from a Cult Insider, this wonderful and delightful podcast about me growing up in a cult. In review, I was born and raised in a cult that splintered off of Scientology. Just around the time I was born, this weird cult, the Process Church of the Final Judgment, schismed, I guess you could call it. And one group took off and did their own extra crazy thing. And the other group stuck around in their own kind of group and made it a little more vanilla, called the Foundation Faith of the New Millennium, I believe it is, or of the Millennium. And that's the one I was born and raised into. And that was my life growing up. This is Epilogue 5. Epilogue 5. And it's called What It's Like to Visit Best Friends Today. Yes, that's right. I have 5 epilogues so far, and actually expect to end up with 6 epilogues, because I mean, why not live a little? I just thought I was done is the thing. But then there were other stories that felt like they needed to be told in these epilogues. So I hope you enjoy this one. I'm going to share a couple of anecdotes about visiting best friends. You already know some of the cool stuff or some of the interesting stuff that happened over the years. For example, when I graduated, I spoke at the graduation. I was the second, number 2, like graduate in my class, and I was tasked with speaking and telling stories about the classes. I just moved my mic. I hope it didn't blow your ears out. About telling the classes history and stuff, which is hard for me. But I told some stuff from my history. And of course, if you've heard all the episodes, you know that I made a joke that the former members of the cult, because they were all still members of this group, but it wasn't as culty anymore, although it was still pretty culty in 92 when I graduated. They took it very badly, and I was essentially blacklisted. Now, I don't think that they would have barred me from going on to the Best Friends Ranch that they have there, but they call it Angel Canyon. But I certainly was made to know that I wasn't really welcome up there. And so given that my mother was still up there and she was part of the group that was not welcoming me up there, that was disappointing. But, I mean, I didn't have as much of a relationship with my mother as you probably would like to, or that you have with your mother, most of y'all, because that was just the nature of the thing. So what I'm trying to get at, it was no skin off my nose. So the first time I went back to visit best friends, let's see here, after going off on my life, the life of get out, graduate from high school, have some special experiences, and learn the fact of God, that there is God, God's real. Hey, this is a semi-religious podcast. Here you go. It certainly isn't an apologetic podcast by any means. Okay. So, after the fact of God, got baptized, joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A year and 4 months later, out on a mission. I went up, to best friends once or twice in that interim year in 4 months between getting baptized and heading out to Brazil on my mission. Of course, my stay in Brazil would be prefaced by a 2-month training stint in the missionary training center. In any case, so yeah, I went up there a couple times, and I had a couple people ask me, "So you're Mormon now?" Yes, I am Mormon now. Of course, we don't like to be called Mormons. It doesn't bother me, but we're direct. We've been asked to to just call ourselves members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because Mormon, we're not really Mormon. We're Christians, right? We follow Christ. Anyway, so what's that like? It's going to church, and other vapid and fairly pointless questions, certainly asked with amusement on their faces and in their tone. And I'm just thinking, I thought then a little bit, and I think a lot more now, that you're mocking me. You have this derision for me for joining a well-established church that doesn't, say the rest of the world is evil. That doesn't make any sense. You people joined this terrible organization that was abusive to people, and it abused kids, and like officially it abused kids, by separating kids from parents. And there was other abuse as well that was not official. And it's granted, any organization, any church, the LDS Church and the Catholic Church and other churches, there is abuse that happens, and that's horrible, and it needs to stop. But there's no official abuse in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in any case. But they joined an organization that was abusive, and it was full on occult, and it was melodramatic in as much as it could possibly be. This is the organization that, no, they're not associated with Charles Manson, but they reached out to him when he was in prison after he and his people murdered people so that he could write them a piece in their magazine. What the frick is that? That's not seeking more enlightenment and seeking more knowledge. That's get some attention by associating ourselves with Charles Manson. So all those complaints that I used to, try to support, those complaints, oh, we're not associated with Charles Manson. I now know the truth. I have no problem with saying you deliberately associated with him. So you don't get to say you're not associated with him, although basically you weren't. But when you seek that out, come on, make the bed, sleep in it, sleep poorly, maybe. Oh, that was vindictive. I'm very sorry. I'm not very sorry. It was playful, more playful than vindictive. I'm not all that angry, but it's amusing. So I would go back and I'd get those questions. And then when I was engaged, I was at Brigham Young University. The girl I was dating, who's my wife and has been for nearly 23 years, she knew my past pretty early on. We connected over theater. I shared some of the life that I had, and she didn't seem to bat an eye over it, which was kind of amazing and continues to be amazing to me. So we dated for a while. She went off for summer. She came back. We dated some more. We got engaged. Probably a month or two. Let's see. No. I don't know when this was. It may have been early on in the engagement. It probably was. We went back to have a document signed because we were sitting in the basement of Miller, the apartments that I lived in, just hanging out for part of the evening. And she pointed out that she didn't want to have my legal last name as her last name when we got married, that she would be happy to take Garrett as her last name, but she would not have my legal last name at the time, which was Fripp. Did I ever reveal that here? I don't know if I ever did. Anyway. So, yeah, I totally got it. I'd been going by Garrett for decades by that time, or decades. I was only 2 decades old. Wow, I'm old now. I'm not old. I still have hair and it's not all gray. Although I'm tubby. So I was 25 or so, wasn't I? 24? I don't remember. It's about 23, 24. And I'd been going by Garrett for since I was 8 or 9 by design. I'd found out who my dad was and I took his last name, but it was an unofficial, but I went by it for so long, it became the common use. Right. And it became part of my name. Every time I would write my name, I'd write my name. When I had to write my name legally, I would say my name, my whole name, my first name, Jared, my middle name, which I won't bother saying, but you can figure it out. That legal name, Fripp, and then my last name, Garrett. And so, yeah, that was a lot of names. That's on several of my original or my older documents. It's actually on one of my several pieces of identification, old ones that are expired, especially. But Fripp was my legal name. And so she told me, I'm not taking that name. And I said, okay. So we went back to best friends at that point. We're engaged. I'd served a mission. I was teaching at the MTC. I was studying at BYU. I was pretty assimilated, man. And I was happy to be. I was loving life. I felt filled with purpose and meaning. I was studying the scriptures. I was training to be a seminary teacher in the church. for young people, and it was great. So I felt good about life and was pretty confident about things, and I just didn't care what other people thought, and continued to not. We went there, and I think I may have mentioned this in passing as a story in one of the other episodes. We went to Best Friends, just drove there. I think it must have been in the fall, because in the spring, it's early spring, it would have been, and it would have been too much snow for us to drive down. And anyway, and I needed to see John, who was who's on my birth certificate. So he needed to sign a document, an affidavit, saying that it'd be okay for me to legally change my name. A lawyer that we'd decided that we were, who actually offered to take this and do all the paperwork and appear in court with me for free, had told me I needed to sign this affidavit that he'd given me. So we took it up there, and John walks in the room and says, "Hello, all right, I'm supposed to sign something, how?" And Anne-Marie nearly burst out laughing, because I'd been imitating him, for the entire time that she and I had known each other, which is a year and a half, not every day, but I'd done it a few times, and she thought I was exaggerating. Friends, I was not exaggerating. That was the way he spoke, and I'm doing a very good imitation. He's a decent feller, for all of the flaws that we all have. He was a decent feller. Big old cool eyebrows. And he came in and he signed it. "Right, very good. It's all signed up, and take have a good one." And he wandered off. And Anne-Marie and I wandered off after a little bit. We probably saw my mother, Magdalene, at the time. And then we wandered off as well. That was the one time. And so that was me not caring what it was like to visit Best Friends. But we've been back a few times. A few times we've gone back to visit with my brother. So my brother and his wife, they live in Hawaii. They have a little boy who's just a little younger than our youngest. And, he's been better about keeping in touch with people and keeping relationships. Obviously, John stayed in the organization, the cult, which then became just Best Friends. And John remarried eventually, Celeste, who is Adam's mom. They had at least a decade of marriage, and John has passed not that long ago, but not really all that recently. So Matthias would visit regularly, which was better than me. I mean, I've always felt like he's a better kid than me, a better son. He was much better about keeping those ties. And of course, I was like, close the door, I'm out of here. But he's kept those relationships up, and that's been good. And so it's actually brought us down to Best Friends once or twice. We've met there for lunch. If you've been to Best Friends, or if you go, this will sound familiar. You walk into the village, which is kind of the main gathering place, and there's some office space and there's some residences there, but there's a big hall, a big kind of banquet dining hall, which is the main body of this building. You walk in, it's with these really big doors. It's cool. A really beautifully put together hall. It's got tile floor, but then it's got a sunken living room sitting area with carpet and stuff that looks out over this beautiful canyon. These huge, like we're talking 18, 20 feet tall, or maybe 15 foot tall, I don't know, glass doors and windows that this incredible open panoramic view of this canyon. And then outside that is actually a deck, which wasn't there when I was spending time at Best Friends. That I don't know how old it is, but it's got to be 15 years old. But it was not there when I was there. When I was there, that was a small patio of flagstones. Sandstone flagstones, and then there was a drop off. And so they've done some very impressive engineering and building there. So we go there, and we have lunch, and we've sat with John and Celeste a couple of times back in the day. Maybe the last time we did this was some years ago. Had a dinner there. That was nice. A couple people, there would be rarely a couple people who recognized me. Most of the people, there's some sun shining through there, and that's okay. Most of the people didn't recognize me, and I didn't recognize them. Why? Because it's a giant employer. I think it's the biggest employer in all of Kanab, certainly Kanab, and probably Kane County. I think bigger an employer than the BLM and stuff. So not BLM in this case is Bureau of Land Management. So that's always been interesting. I go there and I sit down with John, and John was recognizable, and Celeste was recognizable, and some of these folks even knew Matthias and Kamal and their boy. And so they'd come and say hello, and they'd look at me and like, who's this guy? Because again, I rarely would come over. And so none of them would know me. And these were employees who I'd never met, but they knew, the founders and then my brother in some cases. and they, I'd have to introduce myself. So it's very interesting because it's not like going home and it not being home, because it was never home. But, I've seen lots of stuff happen in that step down sunken living room and sitting area. I've been involved in Sunday celebrations and heard revelations, which were just, diatribes about what we're supposed to be doing with our lives there. I've watched Commando in that room, Arnold Schwarzenegger's movie Commando, 15, 20 times over a summer or two. I have flirted with a Scottish girl in that room. I have helped create dinner in the two kitchens that are just the other side of the wall. I've helped serve dinner in that room, in those rooms. I've helped set up chairs. I participated in cult rituals on Sundays, there, not like killing people. We've talked about this, just singing and word, scriptural word, plus also other things that people would do. I've read a poem in that main tiled room during one of those celebrations where the tables are gone and we're just in circled chairs and stuff like that. I've heard Gregory sing "The mark of the beast is upon mankind" in that room. And then these folks are coming up to me and saying, "Who are you?" or being interested in who I am. And I'm like, "Well, I'm Jared. I'm one of the kids." I'm like, "Oh, one of the kids of the founders. Yeah. And they say that as if it's like, "Oh, he's coming home. How sweet." And I'm like, "Do you have any idea?" Because they don't have any idea. There are quite a few of my peers, my colleagues. I'm going to have to close that blind in a second, who are still there, and they are on good terms and good relationships. And I'm on good terms and have good relationships as well. But it's very different from the people who stuck around, right? My energy and my posture with it towards them and with them in relationship is fundamentally different from those folks who've stuck around, who have kept those relationships, who have built new relationships, who've seen the organization evolve in the way it has, and who've been a part of that. And it's not like me coming home, guys, although I have some very good memories there. I've also got some really crappy memories there and some really bizarre memories there. And so, hearing this, "Oh, that's sweet that he's coming home." And for them to, in most cases, not even have any idea who I am. And honestly, not any idea who my parents are, because there's no talk of my father, Bruce. Magdalene is mostly forgotten there as well, as far as I know. Her final husband, Paul, is also mostly forgotten as far as I can tell, although he's probably a little better remembered. So I mention these names, and people who've been there for a long time say, oh, I think I know who they are. Yeah, Magdalene's my mother, and Bruce is my dad, and Paul was a stepfather, although I didn't have any kind of relationship beyond he's the guy who doted on my mother and who treated her really well and loved her. So good on him. And died bizarrely and unfortunately, of course. Most deaths are kind of unfortunate, but not all. I tell you what. So, it's interesting to hear them see it that way and express it that way. But the reality being, nope, I'm here because I love my brother and I love his wife and I love their little boy. And I want to just build relationships with them. And I want to spend time with them. And I'm glad that my wife is here with me when she's been able to. We brought our kids there, I think, if I remember right, one time to have some very vegetarian food that they were like, "Oh, okay, we'll try it." My kids are pretty gung-ho. That's about that sometimes. It's really good. There are some eyebrows raised because we are visibly, fundamentally different from everybody who's there. And that's kind of where I'm going to pause for station identification. And we'll come back and tell just a couple more quick stories and talk about the kind of disconnect that I experience when I'm visiting best friends. So you on the video, I'm going to pause I'm breaking this into two files. Actually, I do two files for my podcast, two audio files, because let's see here. That's in the wrong folder because I need to. I put interstitial, which is between ads that are going like halfway through the podcast. And so I break the podcast into, let's see here. This is Epilogue 5. Epilogue. I break it into two halves so I can easily insert that, those ad files without much problem. Okay, so I'm going to close the blind. Give me a sec. See, that was easy. Oh, my hair is awesome. I'm just kidding. Okay, I'm back on the live video. How you doing? We're at 20 minutes now, so we want to get back in the saddle and get recording again. There's no other things I need to do for the file. It's saved. It's ready to go. Of course, I mean, not while you're watching, at least. I can talk you through it in a minute at the end if you want. Okay, so we're going to open a new Audacity file. And we're going to get back to the podcast after I drink a little bit of liquid. All right. I mean, I don't want to have my mouth spitting water like Jonathan Goffs did in Hamilton. You'll be black. But I do need to have my I do need to have my mouth lubricated properly. Okay, here we go. Don't take that weirdly, you animals. All right, here we go. All right, thanks for coming back and sticking with me through the station identification. We're going to talk a little bit more about some anecdotes about visiting best friends, and then we'll be done here. So I mentioned a disconnect. There just is a disconnect, and that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, right? It's just such a different organization than it used to be. It's much more corporatized, clearly very corporatized, and that's good because that hopefully keeps them more honest. I think it does. I'm not going to soften that. Okay, and it makes the processes work better, and hopefully they're a good employer. Hopefully they're enjoyable to work for. I hear that they don't pay all that well, which is too bad. But yeah, it's pretty corporatized now, and so lunchtime is lunchtime, and there are people who are paid to make the food. Whereas, I mean, I spent two months out of every summer for 5 summers in a row figuring out my own lunch. I'd go and make burritos. I learned to love. Now, don't get barf on me here. I learned to love ranch on a burrito. So I do like a tortilla, and I put a couple, a swath of beans down. I put some cheese down, and if I could find some meat, but meat was a little unusual there sometimes, which shouldn't come as a surprise. And I would nuke that. I'd make 2 of those. I'd microwave that to heat it up, get the cheese melting. Then I'd put a little string of, I'd open it back up and put a little string of ranch in it. And that was tasty, man. That's some savory stuff. I mean, you can tell why I'm in the, I'm a picture of health. Honestly, I'm physically very impressive. I'm not. Anyway, and those habits have continued and sustained me through my life up till this very point. So, it's interesting to have had those experiences, to have done cleanup, to have made dinners, to have had all those other experiences there, and have, and to look essentially very nearly the same, but to have it be so thoroughly different as well. And so he's come home. Not really. No, home is where I live with my family. And again, there was no particular home. Home bespeaks or assumes a safe place, a place of refuge, hopefully for many, many folks, and a place where you feel like you can trust those that are there. And again, the kids, yeah, I felt like I could trust them some, although I should have trusted them more. It's still a lifelong regret I'll probably have. At least it doesn't have emotional baggage anymore, but it's I remember the regret of not trusting the kids that I should have trusted with more of my inner workings and inner life. But such is life. There's no going back. But yeah, I never trusted the adults. Why would I? They didn't seem to like me. They treated me like the enemy, which is, a drum I've knocked and beat several times throughout this podcast. And so, yeah. Let's see. So we were talking about visiting down there with my brother. So we also, one of the times, so we go down to Kanab pretty regularly for the 4th of July. The 4th of July celebration is good, really good down there, but don't go there because it's getting too full and too big. Either one of those times or some other time we happened to go down, we decided we'd take a tour. So Best Friends runs tours, and that's pretty neat. So we decided we'd do a tour of Best Friends with the kids so that they could see what it's all about. And we should do that again. Honestly, that was really neat, and it was cool for them to see where I used to live and what I used to do. Although it just looks completely different. I mean, I helped John for a summer build cat runs. You know what we used for those cat runs? We used knotty, old, jagged, and gnarly tree trunks. I think they were cedar or something. I think they were cedar. Yeah. they were round-ish and they were generally straight-ish, but they were just very rough. We would use those for the posts, for the framing of the cat runs. And then I mean, I spent hours putting those in the ground, hours stapling chicken wire all around them really tightly. I learned to use baling wire and a baling wire tool to connect rows of chicken wire with some overlap so that they'd be a nice tight fit or a nice tight enclosure so cats couldn't jump through and hurt themselves or get away. There were great horned owls down there. I've talked about Francis yelling for Freddy, 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 Freddy. And the great horned owls would just take off with cats sometimes. So you had to keep them safe and keep them well protected. That's what I helped build cat runs, you know, and now that's nothing at all like what they look like, right? Cat Town or whatever it's called is incredibly well appointed, very well put together. Nothing rustic about it. If there's anything rustic, it is like shabby chic type thing, right? So yeah, in any case, so I mean, I saw all that, and like I could also see, I superimposed what I saw then over what my memory was, and there's so much difference. And it all looks a little smaller because, of course, I'm bigger. But my kids loved it, so we did a tour. We went down to the visitor center, not the one in the middle of town, but the one on the slightly more south end entrance of Best Friends, which is the main entrance. Went to the visitor center, got hung out for a little bit. I think we bought a couple of souvenirs for the kids and set up a tour. And we went on the tour and we got to stop at the dogs, where again I helped build some stuff, but most I did a large amount of poop scooping. Fun times. Excuse me. And I could point at this place. I my father and Virgil running the backhoe. We moved water supply pipe. I think it was 2 or 3 inch water supply pipe from it's probably 2 inch from 18 inches down to 3 feet down to get it to stop freezing. Along with the water pipe, though, was also power. And so we had to be really careful with that. And I could point that, I know exactly where that was. I think we did 2 or 3 miles of that in the Dogtown area, and also along the main county road that leads up to, the other parts from Dogtown, like the village and the Pueblo, the bunkhouse, all those things. So, I mean, I remember better what I used to experience there. And I look at it there and I'm like, yeah, this looks like it, but it also looks so much different. People would greet me, people I'd never met, people who'd never met me, people who didn't know me from Adam. And when I said I'm Jared, they would say, oh, nice to meet you. And I would say, and I actually helped build this. And they'd be like, huh? So many of them didn't even know the story of how it all started. I'd say, yeah, Magdalene was my mother. And they'd be like, huh? And I'd say, yeah, and my dad and his wonderful wife, Susan, and their little daughter, my delightful sister, lived in that chalet over there, the A-frame. And they'd be like, what? And I'd be like, yeah, I used to catch flies off the table in the bunkhouse with my hands. And I dug trenches there too. I dug trenches everywhere. That whole property is full of trenches that I used to dig. Hope used to live there. Tyson used to live there. Lots of other, in any case. So, I have all these memories of where these things are, and it feels very disconnected for me. My kids loved it though. We stopped at Cat Town for a long time. Cat Town. That's not called Cat Town. I don't know what it's called, where the cats are. My daughter and all my kids just loved cuddling with the cats and hanging with them. It was really fun. Honestly, I'd like to have my kids be able to go down and volunteer there sometime. It'd be cool if we could, find the time, find the money and other resources to go down for like a week and have some volunteer time. I wouldn't mind volunteering as well. There, it'd be interesting. The steel building is where I'd shower. I showered for 2 or 3 of the summers that I was there in the steel building. Maybe all the summers, now that I think about it. No. 2 or 3, maybe 4. Because for the last one, we were above the Pueblo, when we would just go down to the Pueblo and shower. Yeah, that's right. We set up our tent city on the rise just above the Pueblo. In any case, so that's what it's like for me to visit that. And so going on that tour was very interesting, and having maybe 5% of the people I would talk to know who at least my mother was, know the name, and know Paul and know his name, and none of them would have heard of me, which is just fine. Why would I be talked about there? But it's also interesting, I'd mention some of the other kids and they'd say, oh, okay. And then I'd mention some of my friends, peers / colleagues from growing up who still work for Best Friends. And they would say, oh yeah, Judah and Cara, that's cool. I'd say Matthias is my brother. And some of them would know Matthias because, again, he's been so much better than me at keeping good relationships there. So it's very interesting, to have been a part of all that and to have been not forced at gunpoint or anything, of course, but there's no saying, no, I don't want to work today. That wasn't an option. Basically forced. We're expected to do a lot of work, backbreaking work, every day for 2 months out of it, every summer for 5 years. But for me, there's still a mystique, to it all. And that comes with my nostalgia and my memories. And for those folks who work there, this is just their job. They don't have any emotional connection to what came before. And I'm not there to do an expose, and I'm not doing this podcast to do an expose. And now, visiting Best Friends, quote unquote, is not really visiting Best Friends anymore. I haven't been on the property of Best Friends for some time now. But that's going to change here shortly. Don't tell anybody, or don't tell anybody Best Friends. But we drive into Kanab, and at the north end of town, as you're coming down the 89, there's the hotel that I used to work for a little while. I served tables. The first waiter job I had was at this restaurant, the Four Seasons, I think it was. And it's a hotel where tourists would come through on their big bus package tours. I helped move some bags with my dad. He made some good money there as a baggage handler and maintenance guy there. It's now the Best Friends Hotel or something like that. The Traveler thing. It's like they've made it into a place for their volunteers, or maybe their employees. I'm guessing they're volunteers to stay, which is rad. But they own that and run that visibly. There's a gym that they now own. I guess you can have a membership there, and that's cool. So I guess it's open to all townspeople, but it's owned by Best Friends, which is cool of them to do that because they've got the resources and can provide that for the town and locals. And then there's the Best Friends Visitor Center, which is interesting. There's one in the middle of town that used to be Radio Shack, but now I'm just reminiscing about Kanab, right? But then there's also that restaurant owned by a founder of the of Best Friends, and that other place that's owned by a founder of Best Friends, and all these properties and houses, some of them I'm aware of, that are owned by the founders, several founders of Best Friends, and some of the young people my age. And it's really, really quite an interesting thing to think about that now, and to see that now, when I also, for the first time I ever heard about the purchase of the property, I heard that the townspeople were very suspicious of them, and weren't all that welcoming, so to speak. But I don't think that's true for all the townspeople. I think some townspeople probably were welcoming. The first time I went there, being told that, we had to be a little careful and being able to go to town, but we would go to town very rarely and only with adult supervision. Certainly no free reign there, never interacting with any adults there. And then to land there when I got out, because that's where my dad was living, of course, in Kanab, and to have people still be quite suspicious. It was only, I don't know, 6 or 7 years after the people had shown up after buying the ranch. And so there was still some suspicion, and there was, for good reason. And there was still, perception that the people up in the ranch, Angel Canyon, as they called it, and I think it's still called, were weirdos. And, they are still kind of weirdos, honestly, but they're good weirdos and they're doing good things. So, whatever. And now to have them be such a mainstream part of Kanab, to have Kanab and its life being kind of prolonged and enhanced by the presence of Best Friends and its more formalized, more corporatized business that it is there. So that's very odd to me, and somewhat, interesting in a philosophical way and in an academic way. But I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that. I just wanted to think about it and share some thoughts for this particular epilogue episode. Okay, 2 more quick things, and then that's it for this epilogue. Thanks for tuning in, by the way. I hope those of you who are watching the video aren't too bored by my delicious and wonderful background. You who are just listening, the people who are watching the video, if they ever do, are seeing my office with a Brazil flag and part of my hat collection, a Frank Frazetta artwork calendar, and a Firefly poster and my whiteboard with my to-do list. So I'm going to do one more episode, and it's going to be the last epilogue and last episode, and I'm going to record it there. I don't know exactly where, but I'm going to be on the property somewhere. So the sound will be different, and I'll do a video as well. That I won't do live. I might do live, but I don't think I'll have the bandwidth or the signal to do live. But yeah, that's how I'm going to record the last episode, is on site, and it'll be a nice emotional tie, kind of tie it all up, give some good fun emotional stuff. That episode is called Epilogue 6, The Cult, Stories, and Who I Am Today. I thought it would be a good kind of resolution for me to do that on the property. Okay. So again, I don't know where, and I won't be trespassing. Don't worry about it. There are some public places, public-ish places there that they don't mind people being there. So it'll be fine. I'm not going to do anything too rogue or anything like that. Maybe a little. Okay. Again, nobody at Best Friends listens to this, I don't think. But if somebody at Best Friends does listen to this, hey, if you want me to just do it officially all there, that'd be great. I'll do it like in the village. That'd be amazing. Oh my gosh. Anyway, that'd be kind of fun, but I don't think they'd allow that. Given all the things that I've shared, and might share too at that point. So that's the second to last thing. The last thing is this. There are quite a few listeners of this interesting podcast out there. I wouldn't mind there being more. Please continue to tell your friends, your family, your enemies, share links, share this video. And please, boy, I can't ask you enough, and I can't thank you enough, those of you who've reviewed. Please review episodes, review all the episodes, rate them on iHeartRadio or iTunes or Apple, whatever the heck, Google Podcasts or some such, Amazon Podcasts. This should hopefully show up there too eventually. Please help support this podcast. There's some cool stuff here. I'm going to tell you something, because I've decided that I need to stop being bashful about what I want to do here. I want to be famous, but I don't want to be famous because I want people to know who I am. I want to be famous because it means that there's some money coming in, because I want to travel with my wife. And so if we could figure this out, I want a movie deal. I want to help maybe create a script, and I want to have a biopic of not necessarily of me, but maybe of me. It's kind of an interesting arc, right? I want this to get big. I'd love it to go a little more viral than it has. Although, 17,000 listens isn't bad. So again, share, please share, review, and rate. Tell people about this thing. I want to get this in front of people. I have dreams of making this bigger. The story, my story, the story of being heard and not being erased, of not bowing, not bending the knee, not letting yourself be washed over by forces greater than you. Okay, that's the story I want to tell. That we have the power to stand strong in a turbulent time, and a time that wants you to bend, and you don't have to. So there's that. Lastly, again, there are plenty of listeners out there. And I've had some interactions online with a few of them. I've had a few folks comment about Best Friends in its current state. And some folks have even said some things about Best Friends in its current state, and some of the things that they do, some of the practices that they have that aren't laudable necessarily. It sounds like there are some people who know or who have been treated poorly by, Best Friends, the animal sanctuary, the corporation, and maybe either by founders or by other long-term members. And I'm sorry that that's happened. I really am. I feel for you as a person who's been at the wrong end of that kind of treatment, although there's no right end of that treatment, the receiving end of that treatment. I feel for you. It's bad. They are legion, and so it's hard to feel like there's power to fix it, to get not retribution, but to get some sort of reparation of some kind. So I'm sorry for that, and I'm not here to do an expose. I'm not here to tear down. I know that I have protested a little too much on the whole. They're doing good things, but I have no interest in legal action. but I do want to just say this very important thing. I'm aware that they're not great people in some cases. I'm aware that they're also doing good things, and I admire what Best Friends does in general. I am also aware that, of course, with all good things, there are still some things that don't go ideally, and that there are some people who do behave badly. And I'm aware of some of those specifically, those bad behaviors by founders and other long-termers down there. I'm aware of it, and it's wrong, and they shouldn't do that. They should run their lives better. They should be more professional in some cases, and that is that, period. Again, I'm not doing an expose, but I'm aware of it. And I'm not here. I'm not going to try to tear anybody down. I'm not going to try to destroy anything. I'm not going to try to name names or publicly shame. It's not my job. It's not my role here. But know that I hear you. I hear you. Those of you who've commented on my Facebook page and who've sent me emails and commented even on Instagram, which has been interesting. I hear you. I'm sorry that you've gone through that. And I do hope you can find a way to forgive. They don't deserve forgiveness necessarily. But you sure deserve the peace that forgiveness brings you. Our hearts are not meant to be filled with bitterness. It's just not a good state to live in. And thank you for listening. One more episode, and then this is all done. It's been a fun journey for about 2 years. And until the next epilogue, I hope you keep listening, keep telling your friends. And my friends, like I say in my book, Beyond the Cabin, go beyond, man. That your circumstances do not define you. They just give you opportunities to define yourself. Until next episode, take care. And now I've stopped the Audacity recording, and I'm about to stop this live recording. That'll become a video, which is a long one. Mercy, it's big. At this point on my Audacity files, I do 3 things, and I also do this for my audiobook recordings. I select all. I have I compress it with the specifications that I have learned about that make better audio. I keep it all selected still. I do a normalize so that it brings the highs a little lower and the lows a little higher, so that it's not quite all over the place. It doesn't, that way it doesn't burst people's eardrums or get too quiet. And then I do a noise reduction, and that is simply there's always a background noise. There's room tone, which is fine, which I don't want to get rid of that. I don't want it to be silent between words, if you get my meaning. Okay. I just catch the sound of usually my computer fan, and it finds and removes that from the audio files. And then I just export it as MP3s and load it up to my podcast platform, which is Anchor. So I hope you've enjoyed tuning in. Nobody watched this live, which was per my prediction. Although there's one person. Is that one person me? It shows one person. Maybe that's me. It's probably me. But now it's a video that you're watching on my channel. Hope you enjoy it. And again, one more episode. And until that time, stay cool, man. It's been fun.